Hey guys, Dr. Corey here, and we are going to go over the power of light today. And I always giggle, when people come in the consultation, and a lot of them come off, either referrals, people have talked about it, but a lot of them really don't understand what exactly the light does. They're just in there with hopefully a solution that will get rid of their stubborn fat that they've been dealing with forever, and they've tried, the working out thing, they've tried hey, I'm going to try different, nutritional type stuff, and it just never seems to go away. Okay, so finally they're in the chair, and I always smile because, like I said, they really don't understand the power of light. And they kind of do. People kind of understand the power of light. When you talk about vitamin D and light, people are like, oh, okay, I get that. But light does so much more. And when you look at medical light nowadays, it's one of the most peer-reviewed medical solutions that's in existence right now. It is a hot topic in medical field, and the results are looking really, really good. And we get to see the results in the clinic on a day-to-day basis. So light is so important. We use light for detoxification, to inflammation, to wound healing. You name it, lights have just shown to have great results with a lot of different things. Now, we use our lights in our clinic for diabetic neuropathy, chronic pain, things like that. But to be honest, 90% of our lights in our clinic are used for two things: fat loss and skin. All right, so you're like, oh, good, I'm going to listen now, right? So let's talk. Let's jump into the science a little bit on how does it work on the fat loss side, and how do we make sure we maximize your results. All right, at the end of the day, we want to deliver results for you. So how does it work? A couple different ways. I always just say, when you look at a fat cell underneath the microscope, okay, they look like clusters of grapes. So here's my drawings kind of showing these clusters of grapes. And depending on where they're at in the body is really what's in them, from estrogen to inflammation to even toxins. And that's why they're stubborn, is because a lot of times they're trying to protect your body and they're doing their job. The good news is the lights really don't care where they're at, because they're going to do the same thing no matter where the fat's at in the body, okay? So a couple different things. It's all about wavelengths when it comes into the medical light game, all right? It's all about specific wavelengths, so purity of wavelengths and the power of wavelengths. That's why our devices aren't inexpensive, okay? But I heavily invest in them because they're a massive tool for us to help change the health culture in our community. But one wavelength kind of is going to settle in at that 640 to 660 nanometers, all right? So that wavelength has been clinically proven via numerous studies to basically go in here and poke little holes in the outside shell of that triglyceride, of that fat cell, okay? And then another wavelength is going to come in here, and it's going to help start to break down or denature that triglyceride. So when you pinch it around your belly or wherever that fat is, that gel, okay, the wavelength, that 800 series of wavelength, is coming in here and actually starting to break it up, okay? It's taking a triglyceride that looks like this when it comes to biochemistry, and it's starting to break it down into basically three things, all right? Those three things are glycerol, okay, fatty acids, and water. So when that happens, the question I usually get is, where does it go, right? So let's talk through that. So it goes, once it's emulsified and it's seeped out of the shell, it goes to the lymph, all right? Now, as that process happens, that shell collapses. Okay, it's like popping balloons. You're left with a big balloon, you pop it, now it's just the shell. That's what happens in the fat, okay, underneath lights. So then you stand in front of the mirror, you're like, this is awesome, right? I'm sculpting, I'm changing, I'm starting to see things go away. That's the good news. Okay, now here's where a lot of this biochemistry continues. So when you look at that lymph, okay, lymph, I always describe it as the shuttle bus. It's taking stuff to the next stop. Now, in order for the shuttle bus to be as successful as possible, lymph should be more on the alkaline side, okay? So we're going to bring in solutions for that, whether it's food or whether it's maybe a possible natural supplement to help expedite the shuttle bus. From there, the next stop is the liver. And I always describe, you guys, watch my liver video, watch some of the toxin videos you've done in the past, but I always say, the liver is the soccer mom, right? It is doing everything, okay? It does so much to the body. It does over 200 different things, and yet we just don't value it, all right? We take it for granted. So all your moms, soccer moms are out there like, yeah, that's how I feel, right? Yeah, I'm doing everything, but I feel I can take it for granted. But, as far as the liver does detoxification, it does vitamin D, cholesterol, female hormone metabolism, you name it, the liver is a big player. One of the main things it does is it's going to take this stuff, this content that just came out of that shell, those fatty acids, and it's going to go from fat soluble to water soluble, okay, through a process of biochemistry, and then the body can excrete it, okay? And it excretes it via feces, urine, sweat, those types of things, all right? So that's why we always, no matter what you decide to do, as far as game plan, we're always going to make sure we support the liver, because the liver is a big player, and that's how we make sure we deliver as best results as possible. Okay, you can see some of the before and afters. You're like, man, that person did great. That person did, pretty good. What's the difference? Well, the lights are the same, right? The lights showed up, they did their job, but the biochemistry is different in the individual. So the person that, gets the 20-inch loss in a session has a better functioning liver than somebody that maybe gets 1 to 2, all right? So our job is to assess and try to figure out, okay, how do we deliver better results per patient, okay, or per individual? So that's kind of where the lights, the biochemistry happens. Now, the next question is, well, how long does it last? Is it permanent, Dr. Corey, okay? And I always say it depends, and here's why. All right, so let's say you do 1 or 2 sessions, all right? You do 1 or 2 sessions, this biochemistry happened, you can measure after a session or 2 and you will see change, all right? I mean, we guarantee that, okay? So you will see some type of change. Now, the next question is, let's say you just go do life. I mean, you do a session, you're out doing life, you're still usually storing, and this is freshly squeezed, so guess what the body's gonna do? Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to fill it back up, right? Especially squeezed, it's going to fill it back up. Well, you're like, oh, that's not good, and I agree with you. We want long-term solutions, okay? So how do we get ahead of this? Here's where the magic happens with lights, okay? Just like going to the gym, just like eating, healthy, it's going to take time, okay? When time plays in with anything natural, good things happen, right? Go to the gym multiple times, you start getting a six-pack versus you go to the gym maybe once. Or some of you on this are like, hey, I go to the gym all the time, I don't have a six-pack. And I get it, and it's frustrating. I'll teach you kind of that later. But as far as is you do 1 session and it fills back up, and that's not good. So how do we win? We keep consistent with collapsing that shell. So I always say, I want people in here 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the individual, all right? So a couple times a week. As it tries to fill, we're going to collapse it. If it tries to fill again, we're going to collapse it. We're going to stay ahead of that. If we can keep it collapsed over 6 to 8 weeks, okay? So I always say 12 to 18 treatments is a really good goal, goal for people. And if we can accomplish that, these fat cells harden like a raisin, okay? They stay hard. And at that point, you win. So when you look at lean people, they have the same amount of fat cells. They are just tiny and they're hard, okay? And that's, like I said, that's when you win the game, is getting those hardened over time, all right? So that is the fat loss benefits of a laser.